Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collector. Subscribe.
Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collectors. Bring it on.
Bucky O'Hare.
He goes where no ordinary rabbit would dare. I think Bugs Bunny will have something to say about that. And of course someone somewhere is going to be like, but there's a difference between hares and rabbits.
So yeah, Bucky O'Hare, Captain Planet.
So yes, Bucky O'Hare was shown on CBBC in the early 90s. There's the rabbit himself, and in the Battle of the Universe, You Don't Know What's Next was part of the theme tune. I can't sing you the entire theme tune, as it wouldn't sound very good. But yes, indeed, Bucky O'Hare in the Toad Wars and the Toad Menace was a big cartoon at the time. We've got some RoboCop action, some Hook action. You might, of course, the film from 1991, I think, starring Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman and Julia Roberts. Mm-hmm. And so we've got we've got Captain Planet and the Planeteers here. Apparently, a new Captain Planet series is on its way soon.
Yes.
So we've got some Ghostbusters, some Beetlejuice, some more RoboCop and some Thundercats. Panthro is probably my favourite character.
Same.
And yes, we've got some nice collections here. We'll have a look down a bit so you can have a look. We've got Jurassic Park, a bit from where it all began. Of course, do you remember seeing Jurassic Park in the cinema, Swaley?
September 1993 on a school trip. Then I loved it so much I went and saw it with my mum, and then me and my brother went. I saw it 3 times at the cinema, as did I Titanic, because I was very impressed with that film as well.
I'm impressed that your school took you to see Jurassic Park. It was quite a controversial film at the time, with the scary moments in there.
Yeah.
So, it probably only just got that PG rating.
So,
I spotted this outside. Lifestyles of the brutal and infamous. Are you sure that's not you, Swaley?
There you go.
Because it would fit perfectly.
The big boss man, law, order, and justice of the World Wrestling Federation. And yes, this is the Hulk Hogan signed poster that I picked up recently.
That might be worth an absolute fortune very soon.
Yeah, maybe. I think, who knows? Could become the $1 million man then,
We need to take a moment to acknowledge the Hollywood Hogan teddy bear.
Absolutely.
Of course, Hollywood Hogan was probably the most famous heel turn of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but before that, this is a new addition to Swaley's collection, and it makes perfect sense that you were able to get a Hulk Hogan tent.
There you go.
And welcome to this era. Does anyone else remember when Hulk Hogan had a cartoon series? It was shown on Saturday morning TV here in the UK.
That's right.
It was on, I think it was on Motormouth or something like that. I think it was one of those shows.
Yeah.
So yes, there we have it, and he's always in that exact pose of shirt ripping.
Absolutely. Yeah. Welcome to the Wrestling Museum, Mr. Field.
And here we are, surrounded by wondrous nostalgia and men wearing very questionable clothing. And some women as well. We've got a few bits here. You can see lots of them. You can see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in a very early form. The youngsters will look at that and be like, is that really Dwayne Johnson "The Rock"? Yes, dear child, it was. Once upon a time he had hair and no tattoos.
There you go.
Another era entirely.
Yeah.
Looking at some other stuff, a Nintendo Game Boy money box.
There you go, yeah.
We have some memories here. We have Hulk Hogan himself, alongside the British Bulldog, another very prolific wrestler of the early 90s. Ultimate Warrior. I think Ultimate Warrior was the very first wrestler that I was aware of. I remember seeing a picture of him, and my younger self thinking, he looks angry.
Indeed.
We also here have the Legion of Doom, and I want an outfit like that. We have the Simpsons corner here. We have some dating back to the very early days of The Simpsons. Back when it first started. Lots of material here. I do believe some of these video games dated back to the early 90s, as did Home Alone.
Absolutely.
As you can tell, we've got
Some
wrestlers in teddy bear form.
some wrestling buddies, there we are. And we have the Macho King Randy Savage, my favourite wrestling buddy there, and some Hasbro figures right here.
I love how you just say some.
Some, yes.
I think very few people have as many as this.
There you go. There you go, and our Hasbro clock, of course.
Right, we've got a gummy bear
Yeah.
with. We need to put some clothes on. Fozzie. And Bingo Beaver. Bingo Beaver was my favourite member of the Get Along Gang. Not sure why, he was a bit of a twonk. Zipper Cat. Now, Zipper Cat has a lot of similarity with many people that you meet on the internet. For starters, he's a cat. Everyone on Facebook and social media loves cats. He has retro value, being from the 80s. And he's one of these super competitive people for whom, but really, he's very good at bigging himself up when he's actually not brilliant at stuff. But he does have a heart of gold. And I do think that heart of gold does come out when it matters. And I like to think that many people that you meet would do that. So if you find someone who has a lot of credentials for as the same as Zipper the Cat, look out for that heart of gold. If it's there, you've got a keeper. I also did not explain that very well, but you know what I mean.
Indeed.
So yes, we've got a few Masters of the Universe, Thundercats. Apparently Thundercats will turn 40 this year.
Oh, wow, yes, of course. Thundercats. So which was your favourite out of Master of the Universe, Thundercats? Which did you prefer, mate?
I kind of went off Masters of the Universe. I think I found the I have the power to be a bit painful on the ears.
Yeah.
But
Get that.
Thundercats was good fun, but I had no idea what was going on half the time.
Of course.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
Thank you.
Boom.
Sweet.
Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here with another online blast from the past. Here's a look at what websites looked like in the 90s. The Space Jam website was launched in 1996 to coincide with the release of the film of the same name, starring Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes crew. Now, this website has been archived and is a good example of how websites looked in the 1990s. More and more homes were getting the internet at around this time, but they were still using the dial-up connection, which means that websites took a lot longer to load, meaning the websites that we had back then were a lot more simplistically designed than the ones you see today. As you can tell, there are some bits where the writing and the backgrounds sort of like they don't go together very well, as you can see. And there wasn't really any sort of flashy graphics because they would just take too long to load. You can click on various parts here that do keep it very simple. So you just click through, see a few things here. You've got a few bits from the movie here, for those of you who remember it when it first came out. Again, you've got a few bits here where the background and the writing, not very easy to read. You wouldn't have something like this now. But yeah, this was what we had back in the 90s. I mean, if I go onto something like here, this is a much more modern day looking site. Now, something like this, if you were running this on dial-up internet in the 90s, it would take forever to load. But yeah, feel free to have a look at it yourself, and yeah, just kind of for a bit of a blast from the past of what websites looked like in the dial-up era when homes were just sort of like getting the internet for the first time. You can find it at spacejam.com/1996.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here. I'm on my way to meet some friends, but look what I found on the way! Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here, and well, today, while I'm on my way to filming, Swaley has asked me to talk a bit about my past with video games. I've never been very good at them, I'll confess this, and we were a bit of a late starter to video games in our family. We first got a NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, for Christmas in 1991. And it came with the first Super Mario game, and well, at the time that was all we needed. We were pretty much all hooked instantly. I know the original Super Mario game does look dated by today's standards, but it's easy to forget just how amazing and innovative it was at the time. And we pretty much swore allegiance to Nintendo, because we couldn't afford both Nintendo and Sega machines. But so many good games that we played along the way. Dizzy, Kirby. My microphone has fallen down. This is what happens when you do videos while walking. As well as Dizzy, Kirby, Legend of Zelda. So many good games that just like in the 90s were the most exciting thing ever. There was probably a bunch of grown-ups complaining about how we spent far too much time on them, but you know, if they'd had them in their day, they'd probably have been addicted to them as well. I got my first Game Boy in 1993. I was 12. I have no idea how I managed to save up enough money for it, but you know, I absolutely love Tetris. I had Lemmings as well, which I really enjoyed. There were a bunch of Mario games for that one, which were all great. and lots of other games I liked. The Tiny Toon games were really good fun, and Wario, who can forget him? So many good ones. The last time I really played on a video game that much was Spyro on the PS2, I think it was, year 2000, which I like to think I did okay at. I didn't collect absolutely everything that you need, all the jewels and stuff that you needed to complete the game, but you know, I like to think I did well. I don't do a lot of that kind of video gaming nowadays, as I don't really have a lot of time, and also, as I mentioned, I'm not very good at it, but it's an important part of my history and my childhood that I'm thankful for. And hopefully, those of you watching this, passing, will know exactly what I mean. Thanks for watching today, everyone. Don't forget you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media and also at nickfieldmedia.com. And come and see one of my comedy shows soon as well.
Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here, and it is time for part 2 of our delve into the 90s according to the Bluetones. I have a few bits of Bluetones merch. I went and saw them live in March, and I have this rather impressive hoodie as well, although I haven't worn it much recently for obvious reasons. So, where were we with the Bluetones in the 90s? Well, we talked a bit last time about how it's the 30th anniversary of their first single, Are You Blue or Are You Blind, making the charts last month at number 31. And then they went on to have a few more hits, including number 2 with Slight Return, number 1 with the album Expecting to Fly, and then in 1997, they were kind of nowhere to be seen, bar a tour towards the end of the year. And everyone wondered, what were they doing? And, well, they were working on their second album, which came out in early 1998. The lead single was called Solomon Bites the Worm, which is based on an instrumental called Bite the Worm with a tale about the life of Solomon Grundy, which, when you look it up, is a relatively famous poem. So that one came out, and this is the album that it's from. All the artwork is drawn by their bass player, Scott Morris, the brother of lead singer Mark Morris, and very distinctive. And so yeah, this was the album. It came out in March 1998. I was really excited. It came out the same day as Space's Tin Planet. So 2 of my favourite bands released albums on the same day. I was so excited, and also had toothache that day. So, you know, I like to think that these kept me going. So this charted at number 10. So didn't quite reach the dizzy heights of their first album, but then guitar music was starting to go a little bit out of fashion by that point. I think Britpop was way past its peak. But I like to think that they still did pretty well with what they had. Solomon Bites the Worm got to number 10. The follow-up single, If, they actually performed, I think, both of those songs, excuse me, at the gig when I saw them in March. And If is a really good one. It's definitely one of the ones where they sort of just let everything sort of flow, and yes, it's got this big crescendo finishing and is quite something to behold. But it's also got a lot of sing-alongs as well, so yeah, pretty interesting. I think on the whole, Return to the Last Chance Saloon was a much rockier album and definitely more Americana influenced than the first album was, and some of it landed, some of it didn't. In my view, it wasn't as good an album, but you know, fair play to them for going and trying other things. And then they bounced back in the year 2000 with the album Science and Nature, which I think is one of their best albums, and it definitely felt like they'd flowed a lot more, and I think they built a lot more on what worked on their first album rather than trying to be heavier, which I don't think suited them. The singles from this track, from that album, were, I have a huge array of CDs here, I've got to try and find them. Ah, there we are. Keep the Home Fires Burning, which is a very sweetly sung song about living in a slightly abusive household, more than slightly. And also Autophilia, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love My Car, which is basically a song with a bunch of innuendos about a car. I love your body working, your flashy pop-up lights. I think, say no more. And so yeah, so that was the Bluetones in the 90s, and I have a couple more albums of theirs here. The follow-up to Science and Nature was Luxembourg in 2003, and then there was this self-titled album in 2006, and I think they released one more before they split up in 2011, but bounced back a few years later, and they have a new EP out. I think it came out around the time that they performed live in March, and when I saw them. And if you get the chance to go see them live, then definitely do. They're still really good live, and there's still, blimey, lots of good sing-alongs to be had, because that is what the Bluetones are good at. Hopefully you have enjoyed this little foray into some more top 90s artists. We will be back with more of them very soon. In the meantime, don't forget to check me out on all the socials at Nickfield Media. You can also hear me on Phoenix FM every Wednesday at 8 PM, and I'll probably be popping up in a comedy club near you sometime as well. Thanks for listening, Retroheads, and see you again soon on 80s and 90s Retro Collector. Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here with another delve into my CD collection, and this one is a rather special one for me, as we are talking about one of my favourite bands of all time, the Bluetones. The Bluetones were formed in Hounslow in 1993. They originally ran until 2011. I remember going to their last ever gig at the Shepherd's Bush Empire around that time, but they have bounced back, and I actually saw them playing live earlier on this year at I think it was the O2 Academy in Islington, and well, still as much fun to watch now as they were back then. So I wanted to cover this one for two reasons. They crossed my mind when I was at a comedy gig, and which was actually in Hounslow, and I was like, oh yes, home of the Bluetones. I haven't talked about them on the 80s and 90s Retro Collector yet, so happy to put that right now. But also, last month actually marked the 30th anniversary of their first ever top 40 hit. This one right here, Are You Blue or Are You Blind? I remember hearing this song and I really, really liked it, and yeah, I was like very interested in the band ever since. This track peaked at number 31 in the charts. I don't know if this was the version that was released as a single, as it's only got like the one song on it, so it might actually be a promo. But the thing with this track is that it wasn't featured on their debut album released early on the following year, Expecting to Fly, which of course I have talked about this on the channel before, and went to number one and is still one of my favourite albums of all time. So this track sort of faded into obscurity for a little while, but then it randomly popped up as a secret unlisted bonus track on the single Marblehead Johnson, another single that never featured on an album. And yes, the obscure track was available again, and I'm a bit gutted, of course, that we can't play you anything from any of these songs, because obviously we don't, because of copyright. But I highly recommend that you go check out the Bluetones on your streaming platform of choice. And some other CDs of theirs that I own their first top 20 single, Bluetonic. It went to number 19 in I think around October 1995. And I also, of course, have the song that they are best known for, Slight Return. Went to number 2 in early 1996. I remember finding some of these. I didn't buy them at the time. I found them in like a HMV sale. They just randomly brought out a bunch of CDs that I think had just been lying around, not on the shop floor. And yeah, so quickly snapped this one up. And There was one other single from the Expecting to Fly album, which was called Cut Some Rug, and was backed with Castle Rock, which is another obscure track. I think it was just a B-side that they liked a lot and decided to list as well. So there we go. And I highly recommend the Bluetones. Marblehead Johnson came out in 1996, September of 1996, when they were definitely at the peak of their powers. And I still highly recommend all these singles and the Expecting to Fly album. Really good taste of the mid-90s. They maybe didn't quite reach the giddy heights that Oasis or Blur did, although they did come very close. And I think they sort of like ended up dissociating themselves from that scene for a while. And the fact that they are still out performing and getting big crowds now is just fantastic to watch. They released a new EP earlier this year, and of course after 1996 they basically went missing for a year, but they did come back, and as we will discuss in part 2 of this little delve, was it a big huge comeback or just a slight return? Coming soon to 80s and 90s Retro Collector. In the meantime, you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media, and you can also listen to me every week, every Wednesday at 8 PM specifically, on Phoenix 98 FM or phoenixfm.com. And if you do go to phoenixfm.com and look up my show Curveballs, you can listen back to previous shows as well, including the time that we had Swaley on the show. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I will see you again soon for another delve into CD world, including part 2 of the Bluetones in the 90s. Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here with another look at the 90s origins of a well-known band. Today, can you recognise this? Which band could this be? Well, I don't know who the young lady with green hair is, but I can tell you it's an early single by Muse. This track was entitled Cave and was from their debut album Showbiz, which came out in late 1999. Muse, of course, were formed in Teignmouth in Devon by Matthew Bellamy, Chris Wolstenholme and Dominic Howard, and of course they've gone on to record numerous albums, headline numerous festivals, and their shows just seem to get more and more and more theatrical, which of course we heartily encourage here at 80s and 90s Retro Collector. I have a couple of older singles of theirs. The first track I ever heard of theirs was their song Muscle Museum, which contained the classic line, "I've played in every toilet, but you still want to spoil it." And that was in late 1998 on a smaller label, just before they signed a major record deal. Cave was one of their earlier singles. It charted at number 52. I think it was the second of their singles to chart. And I have their first top 40 hit, Sunburn. This was a hit in early 2000. And it came in this really nice box, which they also did for the follow-up single Unintended, which you actually got sent to you on the mailing list. If you were on the mailing list, you got sent this nice box to keep the CDs in. Nice, huh? And there's a couple of clips here from, they're both clips from the Unintended video, which I think was a sort of sign of the theatrics that we were getting to come from them. So yeah, it's really fascinating. I really still like their first album. It's maybe not sort of like as grandiose as some of their later works, but it really kind of like shows just how ambitious they were. And I think that was a time where a lot of people were sort of like sticking to what they know, and I think a lot of guitar music had maybe become a bit safe, which had led to it falling out of popularity after the hugeness of Britpop. But yeah, I think it was definitely a sign of things to come, and a definite sign of guitar bands starting to become more ambitious again. And then of course they went on to release more albums, including Origin of Symmetry, which was their first top 10 album, and which of course also features the single Plug In Baby, or as Mark Goodyear on the Top 40 called it, Plug In Baby. I'll never stop finding that funny. And of course Hysteria, and there was Black Holes and Revelations as well. And yeah, so that is a look at the early origins of Muse here. And if you're still discovering them and you haven't heard Showbiz before, then I definitely recommend it. It's a really interesting listen, simply because it was kind of what they were doing at the beginning of their careers, and it just goes to show that that they knew what they wanted and kept going. And I think it's fair to say that they got us. Thanks for another session here on 80s and 90s Retro Collector. Thank you all for joining me, and don't forget you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media. I talk about music and play a lot of it on Phoenix FM every Wednesday night at 8 PM on phoenixfm.com, or by telling your smart speaker to play Phoenix FM, 98 FM of course on the dial. And I will see you again for another look at some old CDs here on 80s and 90s Retro Collector very soon. Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here with another delve back into the 90s in my CD collection. Now last time we spoke a bit about Laverne's musical past, which a lot of people don't remember. Now she's best known for Desert Island Discs and Six Music presenting, and I actually have another Six Music presenter who's also worked on Radio 2, who has a bit of a musical past. His name is Matt Everett. That's him there. I'll leave you to decide whether he is sneezing or just stubbed his toe really badly. Yeah, well done, art director. And he's not best known for being in the Montrose Avenue musically, although this is a very good album, which I do recommend if you can find it. He's best known for being the drummer in Menswear. Anyone else remember Menswear? It is hard to believe that it was 30 years ago in April that they became the first ever band to perform on Top of the Pops without releasing a single beforehand. I don't remember the exact story about how that happened. There was a lot of buzz about them at the time, and Top of the Pops just latched onto that, and they later released a very limited single called I'll Manage Somehow, which sold out pretty much all copies on the first day of release. It was a very limited edition. And this is a single of theirs, but I do have their one and only album that was released in the UK entitled Nuisance. That will actually celebrate its 30th anniversary later this year. I have it on cassette somewhere. It's up in my loft. I am going to go and find all the stuff in my loft and have a big series of videos on that. So you all have that to look forward to. But in terms of Menswear, they did release one other album after getting dropped from their label, which I think was only ever released in Japan. And it is floating around on YouTube, so do have a look for it. I managed to listen to a couple of tracks that I thought I'd never actually be able to listen to. Yeah, that is the wonder of the internet nowadays. I mean, you know, there's all sorts of internet campaigns nowadays, but considering, although the internet existed, very few people had it in 1995, to get that kind of campaign that got you on Top of the Pops was no mean feat, let me tell you that. And as for Menswear themselves, they're not as fondly remembered as the likes of Blur and Oasis, but it was the first guitar album that I ever bought. So it was a bit of an education for me, so I thank them for that. So yes, and now of course, their drummer Matt Everett is best known as a presenter on Six Music and Radio 2, and yeah, I remember hearing it, I was thinking, that Matt Everett? Because that's the age I am and the generation I'm from, and yes, today's generation will have a few of those memories as well, and well, bring them on I say. Thanks for listening all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget to find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media and on Phoenix FM every Wednesday at 8 PM. Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here with another delve into my CD collection from the 90s. It's good to be back here on 80s and 90s Retro Collector. I had a bit of a summer cold the last week and a half. I really hope that is not too obvious from the audio on this clip. And what we're going to talk about today, it is going to make some of you feel very old. I just have to get that out of the way, but please don't be put off, because I hope some good memories here will make up for that. This month marks 30 years since Blur versus Oasis. Yes, I too am wondering how. Just how. But yes, it was August 1995, that one Sunday, where we were all listening in to see if Mark Goodyear was going to announce that the number one was either Country House by Blur or Roll With It by Oasis. Can you remember who won? It was Blur and Country House. I think their sales were something like 10 to 20% higher than Oasis were. And, well, the thing is, although Blur won that battle to get to number one, a lot of people argue that Oasis went on to have a lot more success in the long run. Their album What's the Story Morning Glory, which came out a few weeks after that, became the year's fastest selling album. Just over a year after their debut, Definitely Maybe, became what was then the fastest selling debut album of all time. And well, you know, the bands went on to have huge degrees of success. And yeah, what a summer that was. It was when Britpop was definitely at its peak. I was looking at some trying to find some Oasis and Blur stuff that I could talk about for you. Oasis don't have a lot of rarities, but I did find a couple of very interesting tidbits that came out during Oasis's peak, which I will share with you in just a moment. But I wanted to share you a couple of Blur CDs that I own. My older sister had both the Blur and Oasis albums. They are either buried in our loft or her loft somewhere. I mean, she sort of like fell out of love with guitar music after that. But I have for you here an import version of Blur's Song 2, which I think went on to overtake Country House as Blur's best known song. It came out in 1997, so it was it was the follow-up to the album The Great Escape, which of course Country House was taken from, Blur's fifth self-titled album. And it was a bit of a slow burner, really. It got to number 2 in the charts, which was very appropriate. But also, I think a hockey team across the pond used it as their intro music, and it just started being used in a lot more, like TV, films, lots of stuff. So in many ways, Song 2 was a song that kind of took on a bit of a life of its own. And yes, all we can say to that is, woohoo! Don't mind me laughing at my own jokes. The other Blur single that I have for you is from 1999, Tender. It was the single that preceded their album 13, which, apart from being Damon Albarn's breakup album, it kind of felt like the album where they were trying to sound like anyone but the Blur that made Country House and The Great Escape album. If you've listened to that album, you'll know what I mean. This covering, I think, pretty sure that is the negative of that. Definitely. And yeah, this one actually has, do you remember the days of enhanced CDs? This was when you could pop it into your computer and it would actually play the video to Song 2, which, if you have watched, is maybe not a masterpiece, but just so much fun to watch. It really is. Go check it out. Of course, enhanced CDs were sort of like the things we had before YouTube took off. I think it was, it was back when music videos, it was when MTV was moving away from playing music videos, and it was like, what are we going to do with these really good short films? So yeah, they started putting them out on singles, and the rest, they say, is history. In terms of Oasis rarities, I don't think there's a lot of releases I could tell you about from Oasis that you don't already know. But during Oasis's peak, which sort of like lasted a couple of years after the battle with Blur, in 1996, an Oasis tribute band called No-Wasis, yes really, got to number 27 in the charts with a cover of I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. You are probably listening to that now, and you're either thinking, blimey, that sounds terrible, or blimey, I remember that. It sounded terrible. Believe me, retro heads, it was. You'd be right on both counts. I'm pretty sure the members of Oasis don't remember it that fondly either. And, well, another slightly odd Oasis release was released on Fizz Panda Records, a label we've mentioned before. They're probably best known now for putting out one of Coldplay's early releases. But once upon a time, just shortly before Blur vs Oasis, if memory serves, there was a 14-minute interview that Liam and Noel from Oasis did with a journalist from the NME. It was this 14-minute, very expletive-laden interview. Was released as a single called Wibbling Rivalry. I'm going to play you a very brief clip of it now.
And we're going to have to say this about how you're going to show up. These lot think it's rock and roll to get thrown off a ferry, right, to come into hotel fires, to get everybody out, and they go, shut up.
That is about as much as we could get away with, viewers, believe me. And that was released as a single and got to number 52 in the charts. The 90s, everyone. So, yes, there we have it. Let us know in the comments of your memories of Blur vs Oasis. I'm risking starting a huge fight in the comments section by saying this, but feel free to tell us if you preferred Blur or Oasis. I can personally see the good in both of them. Oasis gave us some of the biggest anthems and sing-alongs of the 90s. I also really, really liked how Blur were always open to other styles of music and trying other things. One could argue that Oasis knew what they were good at and stuck with it. Although, you know, if you remember Be Here Now coming out in 1997, that became a bit debatable after that. That was probably the most anticipated album that I can remember coming out, and blimey, I don't think they were ever going to live up to an expectation like that, and they certainly didn't live up to it in style. That's a story for another day though. Thanks Retroheads, I'll catch you later. Oh, and don't forget, you can catch me on all the socials at Nickfield Media every Wednesday at 8 PM on phoenixfm.com, and I'll be appearing at a comedy gig near you sometime soon as well.
Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here with another delve into my CD collection, and this one is a rather special one for me as we are talking about one of my favourite bands of all time, the Bluetones. The Bluetones were formed in Hounslow in 1993. They originally ran until 2011. I remember going to their last ever gig at the Shepherd's Bush Empire around that time, but they have bounced back, and I actually saw them playing live earlier on this year at I think it was the O2 Academy in Islington, and well, still as much fun to watch now as they were back then. So I wanted to cover this one for two reasons. They crossed my mind when I was at a comedy gig, and which was actually in Hounslow, and I was like, oh yes, home of the Bluetones. I haven't talked about them on the 80s and 90s Retro Collector yet, so happy to put that right now. But also, last month actually marked the 30th anniversary of their first ever top 40 hit. This one right here, Are You Blue or Are You Blind? I remember hearing this song and I really, really liked it. And yeah, I was like very interested in the band ever since. This track peaked at number 31 in the charts. I don't know if this was the version that was released as a single, as it's only got like the one song on it, so it might actually be a promo. But the thing with this track is that it wasn't featured on their debut album released early on the following year, Expecting to Fly, which of course I have talked about this on the channel before, and went to number 1 and is still one of my favourite albums of all time. So this track sort of faded into obscurity for a little while, but then it randomly popped up as a secret bonus, unlisted bonus track on the single Marblehead Johnson, another single that never featured on an album. And yes, so yes, the obscure track was available again, and I'm a bit gutted, of course, that we can't play you anything from any of these songs, because obviously we don't, because of copyright. But I highly recommend that you go check out the Bluetones on your streaming platform of choice. And some other CDs of theirs that I own their first top 20 single, Bluetonic. It went to number 19 and I think around October 1995. And I also, of course, have the song that they are best known for, Slight Return. Went to number 2 in early 1996. I remember finding some of these. I didn't buy them at the time. I found them in like a HMV sale. They just randomly brought out a bunch of CDs that I think had just been lying around, not on the shop floor. And yeah, so quickly snapped this one up. And there was one other single from the Expecting to Fly album, which was called Cut Some Rug, and was backed with Castle Rock, which is another obscure track. I think it was just a B-side that they liked a lot and decided to list as well. So there we go. And I highly recommend the Bluetones. Marblehead Johnson came out in 1996, September of 1996, when they were definitely at the peak of their powers. And I still highly recommend all these singles and the Expecting to Fly album. Really good taste of the mid-90s. They maybe didn't quite reach the giddy heights that Oasis or Blur did, although they did come very close. And I think they sort of like ended up dissociating themselves from that scene for a while. And the fact that they are still out performing and getting big crowds now is just fantastic to watch. They released a new EP earlier this year, and of course after 1996 they basically went missing for a year, but they did come back, and as we will discuss in part 2 of this little delve, was it a big huge comeback or just a slight return? Coming soon to 80s and 90s Retro Collector. In the meantime, you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media, and you can also listen to me every week, every Wednesday at 8 PM specifically, on Phoenix 98 FM or phoenixfm.com. And if you do go to phoenixfm.com and look up my show Curveballs, you can listen back to previous shows as well, including the time that we had Swaley on the show. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I will see you again soon for another delve into CD world, including part 2 of the Bluetones in the 90s.
You like that? Yeah. True, man. True.
I don't know why do they not teach women to not throw away the boys' comic books?
Exactly.
What the fuck?
I know, man. I know.
I came back from college. When I left, I said, here's a box, just leave it the fuck alone.
Yeah.
I came back one day and I go, where's my box? Oh, it was collecting dust. I gave it to the kid next door. What the fuck? First edition, mint condition, DC.
Wow, wow. Good
And I've
to
been to comic book conventions and I'll see one that I had $10,000.
Yeah? Crazy. I know. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
You're looking well. All the best, my friend. Take care. Hello there.
You've seen Chris. Yeah, there might be another one. Okay, well, yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you. That's very kind.
I have a son mix, so I remember.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I'm just taking on.
Hello. You're lucky that the children are in here because they'd fall in love with you and wouldn't leave you alone.
Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here with another blast from the past with someone you know and a release you might not. Last time we were talking about how the lead singer of this group hasn't aged much in the quarter century since this came out. Today we're probably going to say the same about the singer in this band. Who do you recognise here? If you're looking at it and thinking, isn't that girl on the right Lauren Laverne? It is. Before she was on The One Show, BBC Six Music, Desert Island Discs, and of course she's probably going to pop up on Glastonbury footage this coming weekend, Lauren Laverne was one of the lead singers in the group Kenickie. This album came out in 1997. They released their first single in 1996 called Come Out Tonight, which is on this album, and that was... It didn't necessarily chart, but it was very big on, I think it topped John Peel's Festive 50, which was no mean feat back in the day, believe me. And I really like this album. It's a really good, fun indie pop album. It's very teenage, we'll put it that way, although there was some wisdom beyond their years as well. And but yes, Lauren Laverne there with her brother and two friends, and yeah, it's just a big ball of energy. The album itself went top 10. The biggest selling single from it was called In Your Car, which charted at number 24 in early 1997. I think they suffered a bit from the fact that in 1997, Britpop was kind of past its peak and guitar bands were slowly starting to go out of fashion, sadly. And they released one other album called Get In, which I think is pretty good. It's less poppy than the first album, but I would say it's still a good, insightful listen. It's a shame they weren't more successful, and at the end of 1998, at the end of their last tour, the band all went their separate ways, and Lauren Laverne actually popped up on another single by the group Mint Royale called Don't Falter, which is well worth looking up if you don't remember it. If you were around at the time, then you might remember it. And then, of course, she got more into presenting, and now she's one of the top presenters on the likes of Six Music and Desert Island Discs, and she's the one saying Sky Believe in Better in some adverts for them as well. And yeah, all power to her, I say. So yes, I definitely recommend going and looking up Kenickie. Yes, they're named after the character in Greece, so if that makes it easier to look them up. And yeah, just there's some really good songs there which have lots of youthful energy, which, well, if you need something to perk you up, then go and check that out. I'll be back with more musical blasts from the past very soon. In the meantime, you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media and weekly on Phoenix FM every Wednesday at 8 PM. I'm on air tonight at the time of recording this, so good thing I can remember when I'm actually on. And stay tuned for more from 80s and 90s Retro Collector. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here with another CD collection delve and uncovering a release from an artist before they hit the big time. Today's release is from 1998 and it's by an indie band called The Audience. Recognise the face on here? If you're thinking, blimey, Sophie Ellis-Bextor hasn't aged much over the years, I'll make you right. Yes indeed, in 1998, a teenage Sophie Ellis-Bextor, in the days before Groove Jet and Murder on the Dance Floor, was the lead singer of an indie six-piece called The Audience. This album was released in August of 1998. They released a few singles that year as well, some of which I have here, and two of which made the top 30. And it's actually a really interesting release. It's much more indie pop guitar orientated than the dance related, the dancey pop related stuff that she's known for nowadays. But the main songwriter was Billy Reeves, that's him. He actually celebrated his 60th birthday earlier this month, so very happy birthday to you, Billy. He went on to do other music performance and also broadcasting as well, including BBC London. And I mean, some of the titles are quite interesting. A Pessimist is Never Disappointed, that was one of the singles, and Mr. Do As You Would Be Done By. If you can't do it when you're young, when can you do it? It's a lot more experimental than a lot of the other material that Sophie's done, but yeah, I think it's well worth tracking down. It wasn't a huge success, it charted at number 22. They did record a second album after Billy Reeves left the band a little while after the release of this album, but sadly their second album was never released and the band split up the following year. But of course then fast forward a few months and suddenly Sophie popped up again as the singer on a track called Groove Jet, If This Ain't Love, by French dance DJ Spiller, and was locked in a battle for number one with Victoria Beckham and a duet with the True Steppers and Dane Bowers called Out of Your Mind. And yeah, it was almost like another Oasis versus Blur, I have to say, and which of course Spiller and Sophie Ellis-Bextor won, and shortly after that Sophie went on to have a lot more hits, including Take Me Home, Get Over You, and of course Murder on the Dance Floor, which was resurrected a couple of years back in the movie Saltburn in very unusual circumstances. I always found that a bit funny because my youngest sister actually lives in a town called Saltburn. It's based in North Yorkshire, near Middlesbrough, and its full name is Saltburn by the Sea. I don't think anyone there is quite as odd as some of the people that were in that film, though. I don't think it was meant to be set there anyway. But yeah, so there we have it. Another trip into yesteryear with a vintage album. I definitely recommend tracking down this album by The Audience if you can. It's not like a million miles from the music that Sophie Ellis-Bextor makes now, but it's definitely a really interesting insight into her early days as a performer. So there we go. Don't forget you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media. I might well be performing at a comedy venue near you very soon, and we'll take another trip into my CD collection very soon. Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here, and time for another edition of Bands You Know, Releases You Don't. So last time we did this, which was an obscure EP from Coldplay. This time, who do you think made this? The answer, Snow Patrol. One of the headliners at this year's Latitude Festival, but yes, a lot of people don't realise about Snow Patrol. I mean, obviously it's been 20 years since they hit the top 5 with Run, but this here is one of their early releases from 1999, a single entitled Starfighter Pilot, which was released on Jeepster Records, best known for giving the world Belle and Sebastian, another 90s favourite for those of you who remember back then. And this one, I found it in a second-hand store back in the day, and the single Starfighter Pilot and a couple of additional B-sides. And what a lot of people don't realise about Snow Patrol is that Gary Lightbody, the singer, originally formed the band while he was at university in Dundee, way back in 1994. And this track is from their debut album, Songs for Polar Bears. Interestingly, before they were called Snow Patrol, they were briefly called Polar Bear and Shrug. So this one is from... So yeah, their debut album came out on Jeepster Records in about 98-99. The one thing I would say, the difference between this album and a lot of their later stuff, of course they later became known for being a lot more soft rock, I suppose, but this one actually has, this song Starfighter Pilot actually has a synthesizer middle section. So, which, you know, if you're more used to their later material, then that's probably going to seem a little bit random to listen to. But yeah, I think a lot of their stuff had a lot of kind of like early like electronic influence. I suppose there was a lot of that doing the rounds in the 90s, where I think a lot of people were just discovering sort of like a lot of the kind of like dancier side of music, which was a lot more keyboard orientated, with some synth elements as well. Bringing it back from the 80s, I suppose. I have one other release of people of I have one other Snow Patrol release, what I'm trying to say there, from the band, which is their second album, When It's All Over We Still Have to Clear Up, which came out in 2001. And it features a single called Ask Me How I Am, which also had a lot of electronic influence, but also another track called One Night Is Not Enough, which sounds a lot like a lot of their later material. I think it was a bit of a preview of what's to come. It was sort of like a sort of ballad-esque track. Their songs have always been quite guitar-orientated, but I think that was probably their first kind of ballad attempt, for want of a better term. So I think if you listen to that track, there's it has a lot in common with a lot of their later stuff. And of course, a couple of years later, they came out with Final Straw, from which Run, Chocolate, and a bunch of their other songs that they're known for came out. And of course, of course, Eyes Open as well was the album that followed after that, which actually became the biggest selling album of 2006. And one of the biggest selling UK albums of all time, which only by doing research for this I actually found out. So there we go. I don't think any songs from any of these songs are going to be featuring in their Latitude set, unfortunately, but it's well worth tracking down if you're a fan of the band. If you've recently discovered them, then I would say definitely go have a listen to some of the stuff that came out before Chasing Cars and Set Fire to the Third Bar and You're All I Have, because there's definitely a few gems in there. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget you can find me on all the socials at Nickfield Media.
Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
Hey Retroheads, it's Nick here. I'm filming this quite late at night and I can't find my microphone, so apologies in advance for any bad sound quality. Swaley has asked me to talk about some of my favourite board games, and who am I to say no? First up, Sorry. This is a variant on Ludo in which you have to get your 4 counters to the same home spot. The difference is you draw instead of a dice, you use cards, and every so often you will draw a sorry card, which means you get to start somewhere on the board where an existing counter already is belonging to someone else, and you get to send them home. In a different era, that game would have been called Ha Ha, You're Now Gonna Lose. So I kind of like the fact that it's actually something a bit more empathetic, such as sorry. My nephews really like that game, and they really like this one as well. Trapdoor. Trapdoor is another of these games where you're working your way around a board and you have to get a few of your marbles into the tray in the middle, and every so often, if you land on someone or if someone lands on you, they get to push you, and if you are on a trapdoor space, then down you go back to the beginning. But not every space is a trapdoor space, and the board, you get to like move the board around so a few times during the game, so yes, so you're never quite sure if you've landed on a trapdoor space or not. Last one that I really like, Dingbats. This was a sort of precursor to catchphrase on TV, I suppose. You just had a card with a couple of photos on it, which all add up to a well-known phrase or saying, and you have to work out what it is. So I really, really liked Dingbats. It was always full of random stuff, and it always got you thinking. And yeah, it was a bit more thoughtful than a lot of other board games, which is what childhood me really, really liked. I think I got that for Christmas when I was 10, and was really pleased to have got that. So yes, that was 3 of my favourite board games. Let us know in the comments what yours are. And yes, we'll be going on some more board game hunting very soon. Latest Retro Heads.
Welcome to the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.
Hey Retro Heads, it's Nick here with another delve into my record collection. Today I have 3 albums for you that you should definitely check out from acts you may or may not have heard of, but are definitely worth a listen. First up is Bennett, and this is an album of theirs called Supernatural. It was released on Roadrunner Records, who are better known for putting out albums by the likes of Machine Head and Sepultura, so this was a bit of a departure for them. They're actually a big poppy indie band, and this features one track that was a hit called Mum's Gone to Iceland. The reason it didn't become the theme tune to Iceland's adverts is because it's actually quite anti-consumerism. But this album has so many good poppy, if you were a fan of like indie pop in the 90s, then you're going to love this album. Definitely recommend it. They released one other album called Street vs. Science in 97. This one came out in 96. Before splitting up, but they have gotten back together at least once since then. So let's hope for another reunion soon from them, shall we? Next one is Credit to the Nation and Take Dis. Credit to the Nation are a UK hip-hop act. This album was released in about 1993-94, and it was a time when a lot of UK hip-hop wasn't making a lot of inroads. Credit to the Nation, undeservedly, I think. But I think a lot of people see UK hip hop as kind of like a poorer cousin of US hip hop, which was obviously huge at the time. But there's some really good gems to be found in there. Credit to the Nation had one hit in the UK called Teenage Sensation. They released a couple of albums, and they have split up and got back together a couple of times. And this album, as well as Teenage Sensation, features a song called Call It What You Want, which takes the very bold move of sampling Smells Like Teen Spirit. A lot of rappers wouldn't touch that one, but Credit to the Nation did, and credit to them for that. I would definitely recommend checking out this album. It's very 90s in a good way. The last album that I'm going to recommend you today is a band called Cube, and an album called Fast Food. Now, Cube weren't a hugely successful act, unfortunately. The singer was the brother of the lead singer of Space Hog, whom you might recall had a hit with In the Meantime. I think that was featured in a film or a TV show. But he sounds very similar to the lead singer of Space Hog. This album has a couple of tracks on it: Have Another Drink, Scrounger, Natural Millionaire. There's some really good tracks on here that were actually quite experimental. They've got it starts with the very indie-fied Have Another Drink, which in my mind was a great lost hit, and then another one called Scrounger, which seemed to have a lot more kind of like of a dancier influence. So I would definitely recommend checking out this album if you can find it. So there's 3 recommendations for you, some great 90s albums. I have loads more in my record collection, and I will look forward to sharing those with you in future shows.
You are watching the 80s and 90s Retro Collector.